Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you again. Ambassador Sullivan, thank you very much for your service to the country. You've been asked, I think, a version of this question in a couple different ways, but let me ask it specific to the events that we now know took place over the course of the summer and fall. We've learned now with some certainty, as you've testified, that employees of the State Department, people under your supervision, specifically Kurt Volker, Gordon Sondland, and Bill Taylor, were pressing the Ukrainian government to open specific investigations into topics connected to the Biden family and alternative theories about who interfered in the 2016 elections. Knowing what you know now about what was happening and those specific requests that were being made, do you think the actions of those individuals were proper?
What they were doing back then, was it proper? I'd have to think about that. I don't think that, as I've testified previously, if the concept of investigating a political rival as opposed to encouraging anti-corruption reform, which is legitimate, I think, and consistent with our values, that would be inconsistent with our values.
And so in this case, they were specifically requesting investigations connected to a political rival of the President of the United States. And so your testimony is that, that those requests were improper.
To the extent that they were made, I'm going to have to assume that what I read in the paper, I mean, I'm not present at the depositions, but what has been reported in the press, I've said as a general matter in response to one of the first questions from Senator Menendez, that investigation of asking a foreign government to investigate a domestic political rival as opposed to as part of a larger anti-corruption campaign, which we'd been engaged in, encouraging the Ukrainians for years, those are two different things.
And do you have any reason to believe that the reports in the press and the testimony of Ambassador Taylor are wrong?
I also don't know that they're accurate. I don't know one way. I will accept for purposes that hypothetically, if they are, I'll answer the question. That I just don't know personally.
These, as I mentioned, were individuals acting under the auspices of the State Department. And so I think it's important for the committee to understand where their authority came from. We talked a little bit about this in our private meeting. Did you order Volker, Sondland, and Taylor to coordinate with Rudy Giuliani in pressing the Ukrainians for these investigations into Burisma or the origins of the 2016 interference?
I did not.
Did Secretary Pompeo order these individuals to request these investigations?
Not to my knowledge.
Did John Bolton order these individuals to coordinate with Rudy Giuliani in pressing for these investigations?
I don't have a basis to answer. I don't believe so, but I don't know that he did. I have no reason to think that he did. I don't have a factual basis to provide a definitive answer.
But clearly, if these are people under your supervision, you didn't ask them to undertake these activities. I would imagine you would want to get to the bottom of that. And so what is your understanding as to where their instructions were coming from if they weren't coming from you or the Secretary of State?
Well, they're getting their instructions. Ambassador Ambassador Taylor in Kyiv is getting instructions from the Secretary, from me, and for our Undersecretary for
Right, but on this case, you testified that neither you nor the Secretary asked them to request these specific investigations. And so where did those instructions come from?
I don't know.
And have you made any attempt to find out?
Since I learned of it in September, I have not.
I think that's curious if people operating outside of your specific instructions. I think it's curious that you would not try to find out. Let me just ask a few more quick questions. Is it currently the policy of the United States that Ukraine must conduct investigations into Burisma and CrowdStrike?
No.
But why not? If it was, this was the policy over the summer, so why is it not the policy now?
I had accepted as a hypothetical that was our policy. I don't know that. It is not our policy. Our policy has been to encourage anti-corruption reform generally in Ukraine. That's something that I've worked on for over 2 years, but never with respect to a particular investigation or company or individual.
Is Rudy Giuliani currently carrying out any diplomatic business on behalf of the United States?
Not to my knowledge.
So, Mr. Shevlin, I have a great deal of respect for the work that you have done. You've toiled under difficult circumstances, and I'm frankly pleased that you're willing to take on this difficult assignment. But your testimony as to your lack of interest in asking questions about why people under your control were being given direction that did not come from you or the secretary, and your lack of attempts to delve into what the policy actually was during this period of time. You're accepting hypotheticals, but you don't seem to have an opinion as to whether it actually was the policy of the United States, which by the testimony that the House has received, it clearly was, to encourage these investigations. I do think is concerning, but again, I appreciate the service you've given the country and appreciate your testimony today.